Retired Sergeant Thomas Miranda hadn't planned to return to his city so soon. However, a strange call from his mother, full of uncomfortable silences and evasions, worried him so much that he took the first flight. He didn't give notice, he just came. When he opened the door to his sister Elena's house, he immediately noticed two things: his brother-in-law Julian's arrogant attitude, and Elena in the back of the living room, with her face partially covered with makeup that couldn't completely hide the fresh bruises. Tomas's military instinct activated like a spring. "What happened to your face, Elena?" he asked with a tense voice, without even greeting Julian. "I fell down the stairs," she murmured with her eyes fixed on the floor. Tomas didn't believe a word, and Julian, without even looking at him, served himself coffee as if nothing had happened. "Clumsiness can also be learned, brother," he said mockingly. Tomas looked at him in silence, but inside he had already made a decision. He wouldn't leave that house until he knew the whole truth. The atmosphere became dense. Julian walked around in complete control, commenting on Elena's every movement, correcting small things with a tone that tried to sound nice but was loaded with poison. Tomas observed everything with trained eyes. It was evident that his sister was broken inside. He noticed how she startled every time Julian spoke loudly or got too close. He also noticed that she didn't have her cell phone in sight or access to money in her own home. There were signs everywhere, and he wasn't going to ignore them. That same afternoon, Tomas asked to speak alone with Elena. At first, she refused with visible fear. "I can't. If he finds out, he'll get angry. You don't know how he gets," she whispered. "And you know how I get when someone hurts you," said Tomas with a calm that froze the blood. Elena barely contained her tears. She just said, "Please stay. Just stay a few days." When Julian came back into the room, he threw out a low but clearly intentional warning. "There are no secrets here, Tomas. Everything is known, so don't even think about putting strange ideas. She's fine. And you, know your place." Tomas didn't respond. He looked at him fixedly, the way you look at an enemy who doesn't yet know he's already lost. Inside, he had already started moving pieces, but he needed time. The last thing he would allow was for Elena to be more exposed by an impulsive move. The following days turned into a routine of tension. Tomas observed, memorized patterns, silently collected evidence. He made sure Julian noticed his firm presence without falling into provocations. The hardest part was listening to the muffled screams at night and seeing his sister crying in silence. The most cowardly thing, he thought, wasn't hitting a woman. It was making her believe that no one would believe her, that she was alone, that it was her fault. Julian was an expert at that. One afternoon, Thomas intercepted his sister when she went out to throw away the trash. He discreetly handed her a small paper with a number, a trusted contact at the local prosecutor's office, someone who owed him a big favor. Elena took it, but seeing that Julian was waiting for her from the window, she quickly put it in her pocket without saying a word. Fear was still stronger than hope. At nightfall, while Thomas pretended to sleep on the sofa, he heard a sharp blow and a muffled scream. He got up silently, approached the closed door, and heard Julian say with contained fury, "If you tell that idiot brother of yours anything, I swear, this time it won't just be the face." Tomas clenched his fists. It was no longer just about protecting his sister. It was a personal war. The next day, Tomas called his contact. He asked that no visible patrols be sent. He only needed one thing: access to Julian's file. What he discovered left him frozen. Julian had a previous complaint for violence with another woman. The case was filed away. No witnesses, no evidence, no voice. Exactly what he was now trying to repeat. And just that night, Julian entered the living room, looked directly at Thomas and said, "I know what you're doing. Do you think because you wear a uniform you're going to come destroy my house? If you try to get her out of here, I swear you won't walk out," Julian repeated with a venomous voice, raising his fist next to the knife while the living room door creaked under the pressure of Tomas, who was advancing with the phone in hand, about to dial the prosecutor's contact. Julian laughed and, taking a brutal step toward Elena, pressed the blade against the wooden table, causing a screech that echoed in the silence. Elena felt her heart in her throat. Thomas stopped a meter away with his thumb trembling over the call button, held breath in military discipline, fighting against paternal fear. In an almost imperceptible movement, Julian turned the table over, spilling coffee and scattering papers on the floor. The blow was deliberate, a reminder that he was in command there and that any distraction could cost them dearly. Tomas, despite his training, stepped back. He knew that a sudden action could push Julian to use the weapon. Elena, with a broken voice, asked if there was a way out, but Julian blocked the passage, putting his foot on the papers and mockingly pointing out that she couldn't move without permission. The pressure became unbearable. Every second sounded like a tick-tock counting down the time of their defeat. Julian's face transformed into a grimace when he discovered the paper with the number hidden in Elena's pocket. He tore the paper with fury and bent Tomas's cell phone with a single punch, leaving it useless. "That's what you wanted to do," he spat. "Nobody enters here without my permission." Tomas felt his stomach tighten. He knew he was going to do this, but he never underestimated your desperation, Julian responded in a low voice. He waved the knife closer to Elena, and she moaned, feeling how hope was dissolving. Just when the situation reached the breaking point, Julian about to do something to Elena, Tomas saw his sister tremble, and for an instant knew everything was getting out of control. Without evidence, without communication, without plan B, he felt adrenaline flood every nerve. In his mind, he reviewed every possible step, every distraction maneuver he had learned in the army. But Julian's presence, ruthless and sure of his impunity, reminded him that strength wasn't enough if there was no backup. The room became a boxing ring where he was the only one without real power. It was at that moment that a firm knocking was heard at the front door, followed by a voice that shouted, "Police! Open immediately!" Julian stepped back confused, lowering the knife without taking his eyes off Tomas or Elena. The soldier counted the moisture in his eyes and raised a finger pointing to the hallway. "They're here. Don't touch anything." Julian growled, but ran to the entrance to block it, while two plainclothes agents entered with visible badges. The silence broke, and the tension shifted to the threshold. The misogynistic and violent environment that Julian had built began to crumble with the arrival of the law. The police proceeded calmly, but with authority. One placed handcuffs on Julian after informing him of the detention order for domestic violence and threat with a bladed weapon. The other approached Elena to offer assistance and accompaniment. Julian shouted accusations of betrayal and setup, but no complaint saved him. Elena, with glassy eyes, allowed herself a sigh of relief when she saw them take him away. Tomas approached and, holding his sister's hand, whispered to her that she was safe for the first time in a long time, and that this intervention was only the beginning of her freedom. In the following days, Elena received specialized medical and psychological attention in a safe shelter. With Tomas's support, she agreed to present detailed testimony before the prosecutor's office and attend every hearing. Julian, for his part, faced solid and renewed charges thanks to the previous complaint being reopened. The investigation revealed patterns of systematic abuse. Justice advanced coherently, restraining orders, forensic evaluations, and a possible sentence that finally seemed proportional to the damage caused. Natalia, the agent in charge, praised Elena's courage for speaking up and noted that her case would serve as an example for other victims. Weeks later, Elena started a sewing workshop at a local NGO and resumed her passion for designing clothes for older women. Tomas visited her every morning before his new responsibilities in a veterans corps. He dedicated part of his time to advising ex-military personnel on civil reintegration. Elena recovered her voice and autonomy. She recovered her taste for laughter and chats with friends that Julian had driven away. With each step, she rebuilt the dignity that had been stolen, and Tomas proudly watched as his sister left fear behind. The day Julian received his first public hearing, Elena was present with Tomas in the courtroom. Her eyes shone as she heard the judge emphasize the seriousness of gender violence and announce preventive detention. Julian, pale and dejected, couldn't maintain his arrogance. He understood that this time neither silences nor threats would serve him. When the gavel fell, Elena exhaled deeply. The balance of power had definitively tilted in her favor. Closing this chapter, Tomas and Elena walked together toward the future with firm steps. He, knowing that even the most trained can be overcome by the cunning of evil. She, demonstrating that resilience is the most powerful weapon. Both understood that true victory wasn't in brute force, but in the capacity to raise one's voice and seek help before everything turned to ruins. The recovered dignity became their greatest medal and the most inspiring example for those who still remain silent.